In the early 1990s, the world witnessed one of the most unlikely breakups in history, the peaceful split of Czechoslovakia. A nation that had once been a symbol of unity in Central Europe was about to divide into two countries, but not through the typical chaos of conflict or war. No, this story was far more bizarre. It was a velvet divorce.
January the 1st, 1993. Two nations were born on the same day, and yet their separation was as calm as a gentle breeze. But behind this serene moment was a web of politics, history, and unlikely circumstances that would shock anyone who thought breaking up required a mess of drama.
The birth of two nations. It all began with the unexpected. Václav Havel, the first president of the Czech Republic, and Michal Kovács, the first president of Slovakia, were the key figures orchestrating the breakup. The world was astounded. How could two leaders who had been so deeply intertwined in the shared history of Czechoslovakia decide to part ways so peacefully? These men, once collaborators in the famous Velvet Revolution of 1989 that ousted communism, now faced a different kind of challenge, the breakup of a country. But it wasn't like a bitter divorce. There were no public fights, no accusations hurled at one another. Instead, it was like a couple that had been living together for years and quietly decided it was time for their own space. The political leaders kept a cool exterior, appearing calm and methodical as they negotiated the split. Yet behind the scenes, something more strange was unfolding. The day the flags changed. On the very day that Czechoslovakia ceased to exist, something odd happened. Slovakia and the Czech Republic both raised new flags. And here's the twist. Slovakia's flag was almost identical to the Czechoslovakian flag. It was as though the nation was saying, "We're still family, we just need some space." The only difference was the added Slovak coat of arms, a small but significant change, a reminder that while they were separated, they were still very much tied to their shared past. As the flag-raising ceremony happened, people in both countries couldn't help but wonder, was this a real divorce or just a change in the labels?
A birthday and a funeral.
The most mind-blowing part? The split occurred on January 1st, not only marking the birth of two nations, but also the anniversary of the founding of Czechoslovakia itself. It was almost as if the country was born and died on the same day. A bizarre twist in the tale of this peaceful breakup. People whispered in the streets, "Is this a resurrection or a funeral?" It was a paradox that no one could ignore. The same day that gave birth to the nation, it now witnessed its death, but without the usual tears or turmoil. The idea of the country splitting without violence was incomprehensible. Was this a calculated and peaceful break, or something more profound, like a well-timed, masterfully executed plan? The lack of a mediation and the silent exit. Here's where the story gets even stranger. There was no international mediation, no UN peacekeepers, no intervention from any global power. The split was handled by the two countries themselves. The world watched as Czech leaders and Slovak representatives calmly negotiated the terms, making decisions without any external pressure. The absence of global influence felt like a whispered secret. This wasn't just a political move. This was something far subtler. Could it be that both sides had been quietly preparing for this moment, knowing that it would come, but wanting to make sure it was as smooth as possible? Still friends, just not living together. For a while, the citizens of both nations were left asking, are we still friends? The borders between the Czech Republic and Slovakia were barely altered. Their roads, railways, and infrastructure were so intertwined that it almost felt like a breakup with no real separation. Some joked that the two countries had simply agreed to stop living together, but their lives were still intertwined, as if they were two old friends with separate apartments, but still texting and calling each other regularly. And then, the most unusual part of the Velvet Divorce, the fact that both countries had been living in such a close parallel existence even before the split. They had distinct political systems, but culturally, they were inseparable. It was like a marriage that had long been on the rocks, but neither side was ready to acknowledge it until the moment came. The split, while smooth, felt almost anticlimactic.
It wasn't really over.
As if this wasn't enough of a twist, the first presidents of both nations, Václav Havel and Michal Kovács, still respected each other deeply. They had worked together for years, leading the charge against communism. They were both champions of their people. But now, as new leaders of separate countries, they had to figure out how to move forward without the safety net of unity. And yet, they did it with a shared respect that made the split seem almost like a family reunion instead of a dramatic departure. The Velvet Divorce was a shock to many, but it was more than just a political division. It was a lesson in how two countries can separate with mutual respect, not because of hatred, but because of an understanding that change is inevitable. Despite the split, the nations remained tied together by history, culture, and shared experiences. And that's the wildest part of all. It wasn't just a breakup, it was a new beginning, done with grace, precision, and a sense of unity that no one had seen coming. The Velvet Divorce became a quiet triumph of diplomacy, one that is still remembered as one of the most surreal, suspense-filled, and yet peaceful separations in modern history.